monologues here. So let's just hear a couple of them. Could somebody share Monk? And we know Monk is a hot-headed kid, right? He's very intense. So let's hear who'd like to share one from Monk. Okay. Is that an apple raising or was that a hand raising? Karen? Apple, okay. Leah, would you mind sharing yours again?
Not at all. Okay.
It was perfect.
Okay. So I started right after Glennie and Monk tell Show that or Sco that we're gonna play catch for a few 5 minutes and then it's your turn, and then we'll share gloves. So the last bit of dialogue was 1 minute to go, said Monk with a fraction of a grin. Okay. This guy, if he thinks we are going to switch places, he has another thing coming. Now, what? Now look at him. Why is he climbing up that tree? What a goofball. Good riddance. At least he has given up playing with us. He is a terrible player. Now Glennie and I can play alone, which is what we've wanted to do the whole time. What is he doing now? Oh, well, I don't care. That's where I ended.
Okay, good. Perfect. Okay, thank you. Can somebody share a Glennie? Mm-hmm. Is this thing on? Let me pick somebody here and see how we do. Let's see. Cassandra, did you have Glennie?
I did, but mine was terrible. Do you still want to hear
it? That's okay. Yeah, go ahead. It's fine.
Okay. Mine was, I remember page 3. Where is it? Oh, I'll read the part so you could locate where it's at. The ball bounced off the rim. And then Sco says, I wanted you to miss that. Anything you do is what I wanted you to do.
Good.
Sorry, I didn't say who I was. I'm Glennie.
Right, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I need to think of something to say or do to make Monk not say anything or do anything he might regret to Sco. Oh, I got just the thing.
Okay, good. All right, that's good. Okay, that's fine. And how about let's hear Sco. I'm interested in hearing Sco. Who'd like to give us a Sco? 1 for the money, 2 for the Sco. Okay, Kalia?
Okay, so I chose the part where they notice him walking across the lawn and they say hello and they ask him if he has his glove. So for Sco, I said, did they just say hello to me? Why would they want to talk to me? No, I don't have a baseball glove. I've never played baseball in my life. I'm going to look foolish heaving this ball to these cool 7th graders. I guess if they go easy on me, then I can try to play with them. I just hope I don't make a fool of myself.
Good. Okay. Great idea. Okay. Excellent. Good. So all these are great. So here's how I use the direct interior monologue. Once I taught them the lesson and they had their own interior monologue, and then we did the story and they related it to a character in the story. And the story is not really complicated, right? So they can identify with the characters in the story. Then we started applying these, just like the young lady did when she wrote her job application to be a mitochondria in that part of the cell. So one of the ways that I used these was we were reading a novel, and after we did our quick write, then I would pick a character and they would write a short interior monologue on that character based upon where they left off in the story. And then what it became was really a metacognitive journal. So the way that they were using the characters and their interpretations was allowing them to get inside the character's head and play with it a little bit. Other ways that I've done this one example would be if I'm a social studies teacher and I was just teaching the end of the Civil War, and I was talking about or sharing information on the surrender at Appomattox, I might have some kids do an interior monologue on General Grant, and some other kids do a direct interior monologue on General Lee. In math class, I might have them do an interior monologue on what it's like to be a prime number. Being a prime number is kind of lonely. I'm only divisible by myself and one. It's really hard for me to make friends. Or they could be a direct interior monologue on a verb. Or in music, it might be that they're a flat. And what's it like to be a flat? So you can get creative with these things and give kids an opportunity to do some kind of personal reflection on this using the direct interior monologue. It's a great way to create a journal. And again, you can pretty much apply it to anything. And inanimate objects are as good as working through it with people. It's just like I said, again, the young lady who did the mitochondria. So the article on page 37 explains the process. And if you decide to try it out, then give us some feedback on how it worked. But that's the process. Now, as I said, the whole before, during, and after lesson on the game of catch is in Canvas. So you can download the different documents and walk your kids through the lesson. Also, in there is the monologue on the Mona Lisa, and also the characters, Angry Bird, oh my gosh, all those things. They're all listed. They're all in Canvas as well. So you have the complete packet, all right? If we were in person, obviously, I would be giving you the whole thing, but this is one way that you can get it. Are there any questions on this? Okay. All right. Would you open up your reader to page 23? What you see there is the keyword summarizer. And my question for you is, what is the last entry that we made in your keyword summarizer?
Mine was talking about flexibility.
The mental states?
Yeah.
Okay. Did anybody else have a different one? Yes, Kate?
I think I have going podular.
Yeah, okay. So we walked through the whole idea of setting up pods in the class, right? That's where we left off? Okay, all right, good. I just want to make sure I'm in the right place. So let's just do a quick review for a minute in terms of what we had covered last week. Again, we talked about the notion of the 5 mental states and how we want to understand if our management system and our strategic plan of setting up classes manifests these 5 areas of being able to have kids attain a sense of agency, of course, empathetic thinking, and the 2 devices we use for that are school days and, again, the lesson we just did. Craftsmanship, of course, is about having a mental model of the expectation of what quality work would be. Consciousness is situationally appropriate behavior depending upon the context in which kids are, and interdependence has to do with the dynamic of the group. Okay, we showed a little video clip about Vashti and the story called The Dot, where we talked about how we interpreted the story based upon the 5 mental states. We also talked about how we divide the room up into mutual interdependent non-competitive learning teams that I refer to as pods. Again, the acronym stands for Portable On-Demand Storage, just like the pods that they use when they move. And again, we talked about the different positions in the class, one which we call orientation. And then when we move into collaboration, we talked about the way that we form groups. after about 3 weeks, and we have stability in the class, kids not coming in or coming out, and then we group them in a random selection. But having known the characters after a couple of weeks, I know who put together and who not. So we form our groups that way. And when we want to move into collaborative work, then we simply have the kids turn their desks 90 degrees. So we have all of our postures built in. So what this allows me to do is to have 3 options. I can do whole group instruction, I can do small group instruction, and I can also do independent work. So it's already built in. The important thing is that if we're already using continuous groups, then anytime we want to do group work, it's built in. We don't have to have any big move around the room or anything like that. Okay? And again, if you notice, because classes don't come prepackaged and visible by 4, I will occasionally have a pod of 5. Now, I want to show you the way in which I move kids out of their pod to work with other people. All right, so if you turn to page 44, you see something called an appointment book. Now, we can't really do this here, but I'm going to walk you through it and show you where you can find directions to do it. Because again, even though we have kids in pods and using continuous groups, I still want to have the ability to move kids out of the pod to work with other people. And I'll share with you why that is after we do it, okay? So when we do this, and there are a couple of important points to make here. When we have kids make appointments with other kids, the first thing is they have to be kids who are not in their pod. And the second thing is we only make appointments for 1, 2, and 3 o'clock. So only 3 appointments at a time, okay? And this is all set up for when I want to use these. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So here I have an appointment sheet, and the teacher directs me to get up and go around the room and make appointments with other people in the class. So let's say that I go over to little Justin Bieber Jr., and I say, Justin, will you be my 1 o'clock appointment? If he says to me, well, never say never, then okay, I'm going to write Justin on my sheet, and he's going to write Ron on his sheet. Okay? And then let's say that I go over to by 2 o'clock, I find a little Lady Gaga Jr., and I say, lady, will you be my 2 o'clock appointment? She says, well, it might be a bad romance. But I'll say, well, I was born this way. So she'll say, okay, then I'll be your 2 o'clock. Okay? And then I go over to little Will Smith Jr., and I say, will you be my 3 o'clock? If he says, slap, I'll be your 3 o'clock, then he'll be my 3 and I'll be his 3. And then we go back and we sit down. And then we have a task to do. Okay? So that's how the appointment book works. And I'll get back to the appointment book in a little bit. But for right now, would you turn to page 47? What you see here is something called the pod point sheet. And this is the sheet that drives the entire system. Okay? So I have my kids sitting in pods. They're in mutually interdependent, non-competitive learning teams. There is 1 pod sheet per pod. And I use folders in my classes for kids to hand in work and to get it back. So I never pass out individual papers. It's always in the pod folder. And one of the things that's in the pod folder is the pod point sheet. Okay? So there's 1 pod point sheet per pod. And again, it stays in the folder at all times. Now, I have a coordinator in my pod who is basically an extension of my pen or pencil. They don't really have any authority. But it sounds much better to be a coordinator than it is to be a gopher, right? So my coordinator is going to be the kid that I check in with and make the assessments on the pod sheet, which I'll get to in a minute. So when the class starts, usually you want the kids to just decompress from the 6-minute fashion show they went through to get to your classroom, right? So I'll usually give them some warm-up activity, or sometimes we call it bell work or something like that. While they're doing that, I'm going to then do something that I facetiously somewhat call the power walk, where I'm going to move in and check in with all the pods and make sure that I want to assess them on certain criteria at the very beginning of class. So while the kids are working independently on something, whether it's a review of the day, previous day's lesson, or maybe some vocabulary words, or maybe some review problems or something like that, then I'm going to go in, and the first person I'm going to check in is with the coordinator. If I'm on week 1, then the person number 1 is the coordinator for the week. If it's week 2, then number 2 will be the coordinator for the week, okay? So I'll check in and begin to assess things that are going on in the class right away. During this time, I'm going to use what you read about earlier, is the idea of what we call non-contingent contact, the ratio of 5-to-1, non-contingent contact for contingent contact. Contingent contact being, I need to see you about, versus non-contingent contact. Hey, how you doing today? Good to see you. I like those sneakers. Hey, did you get new glasses? I like that haircut. So again, the benefits of non-contingent attention should be obvious. Like any of us, students need to be noticed and valued. When they feel noticed and valued, they're more likely to be motivated to engage in appropriate behaviors. And the benefits include, if we feel more connected to our students, we model positive interactions, and improves the climate for both teachers and students. The other thing, though, is this. Remember, that neocortex fires off right away, and kids will put you into a category of either friend, foe, or indifference. My goal is to move into the category of friend, not meaning friend, hey, let's go get a beer, but friend like, I'm not going to be a threat to you, and I'm going to work with you, and I'm going to work together for a positive outcome, okay? So it's important for me to get into their heads in that way. One of the ways that I do that is to move around the room, and I think I mentioned this last week, but I'll say it again. One of the things that I do at the beginning of the semester is I never take roll by calling names. What I do is I go to each one of the students, give them a little smile, say, hi, can I get your name so I can check you off? And then they get their name. Again, that neocortex fires off right away in nanoseconds. And again, you know the saying, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression? Same type of idea. So each day, as the class begins, I'm going to move around the room, check in with the pod, engage in the power walk, and at the very least, establish eye contact with every single kid. For those higher profile kids, I'm going to make sure that I make a comment and acknowledge them, okay? Now, if we look at the pod sheet, there's a place for a pod number or a pod name. If you use names, I recommend content names. If you're like a science teacher, maybe names of scientists, or a mathematician, names of math figures or historical figures, authors, something like that. Anything that relates to your topic or your subject area. Sometimes I use numbers, so I might have 1 through 8. Those are my pods, and then the members add their names to the manifest according to where they sit. All right. So if I'm in seat number 1, then little Al Capone Jr. here is going to be the number 1 seat. Across from him is little Lizzie Borden Jr. She's number 2. Albert's 3, sitting next to 1. And then Harriet's 4. And then 5. Claude Rains is at the head of the pod if I need a fifth member of the pod. You notice there's also some criteria for assessing on the left-hand top here. And I want to show you how this works. Now, some people will reference this as a mechanism for positive behavior support. And certainly it is. But the idea is that what I'm doing is I'm making the accountabilities very clear. I don't believe in surprises, so I want kids to know exactly what I'm looking for, and the criteria allows me to establish that. So, for example, arrival is a criteria that I want to address. There's a rumor out there that teenagers sometimes come to class late. Have you heard this vicious rumor? So as I go to the coordinator, and everybody's there, and they're on time, whatever that means. I mean, teachers have different criteria for arrival. Some people, arrival means butt on the seat, pen or pencil out, touching paper, writing something. Until you do that, you're tardy. Other people, just having some DNA near the doorway constitutes arrival. But whatever your criteria might be, then if the pod met my criteria, then I would tell the coordinator to write down a 5. If one person comes in late, doesn't matter the reason, then it goes to 3. 2 people coming late, goes to 2. Okay? All I'm doing here is I'm collecting data. That's all this is. Also absences, which I will check at the same time. If everybody's there, the pod gets 5. If 3 people are there, the pod gets 3. Doesn't matter whether I have a pod of 4 or 5. It doesn't matter. Okay? And this is all written out for you in an article, so feel free to take notes if you wish. There's also a vicious rumor out there that some kids don't do homework. Have you heard this vicious rumor? It's just a cute little homework story. I thought it was cute. This might be a more modern, up-to-date version of it. So on the Power Walk, when I'm checking arrival and absences, if I have a homework assignment that's due that day, then I'll ask the kids to take it out and put it on top of their desk so I can eyeball it. And if it looks like they made a reasonable effort at it, I'm not going to check it. I'm not going to hammer the kid who didn't do it. I'm simply going to give feedback. So it looks like everybody's got the homework. Give your pot of 5. If 3 people have it and 2 people don't, or 1 person doesn't, I'm going to tell the coordinator, okay, just write down a 3. Okay? And then materials is sometimes an issue. So however you define materials for your class, pen, pencil, paper, calculator, graph paper, plain paper, line paper, musical equipment, art equipment, chainsaws, flamethrowers, whatever it might happen to be. If everybody has it, the pod gets 5. And if 2 people have it, but nobody else does, then the pod gets 2. Now, these 4 areas here, I can safely say, are the 4 areas that constituted about 80% of the referrals, meaning kids getting kicked out of class and being sent to me when I was the dean of discipline. So I want to make the accountabilities very clear. And when you're using this to collect data, it has a different kind of power than just telling kids to bring stuff. Okay? Now, during the assignment phase of the lesson, and this could be either an independent activity or it could be a small group activity. So let's say that, for lack of a better example, I want you to write an essay on how you spent your summer vacation. Or I want you to write an interior monologue on something that we did, okay? Or I want you to work on a quick write. So I'm moving around, monitoring, checking in with the coordinators. And if I go over to this pod here and everybody's working away, then I'll tell the coordinator to drop down a 5. If I see 2 people are working and nobody else is, then I'll tell the coordinator to write down 2. What's interesting here is that sometimes when I would do this and I would walk away, I'd hear a kid say, "Why didn't we get our points?" Well, I asked a rhetorical question as to how would you answer that, but my answer is this. You know what, I'll check back later and see how you're doing. Because normally by the time I come back, they're all getting to work. Now, if they're doing that and it took them a while to get started, I'm going to tell the coordinator, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to take this 2 and cross it out. I'm going to make it a 4. That's my cushion. And I'm going to sign it to let them know that I made the change. The only 2 people that ever write on the sheet are me and the coordinator. And obviously, the coordinator always writes it in pen, as do I. Now, the other thing that I want to check on is expected behavior. So if we were going to do an activity like we're going to be doing in a minute, where we're going to be sharing information, then I'm going to ask the coordinator. If you look in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a line that says bonus. It's really not a bonus. I just couldn't think of another word, but it works that way in a sense. So if we're going to have an activity where we're going to be sharing information, then I'm going to ask the coordinator, here it is here, we're going to metaphorically click and drag and write it up here underneath expected behavior. And that way the kids know exactly what it is I'm going to assess. We'll talk about the criteria. So what does it look like when you're sharing information? Well, you're talking with each other. Maybe you're sharing some responses with each other. There are different ways that we know what to look for. And then as the kids are working, then I'll go ahead and assess. So I go over to this pod here, and they're working away. And I'm going to say to the coordinator, okay, give your pod 5 points. And I go over to another pod, and they are not sharing a lick. I mean, honestly, the pod kind of looks like this. There's not a whole lot of sharing going on here, right? So I'm going to move in, get them unstuck, and then maybe I'll make that a 4. At the end of the period, the points will total up by the coordinator, and the pod folder, the pod sheet is put away into the pod folder once again to be obtained the following day. And then in that folder, there might be homework assignments, there may be tests, there may be other things, maybe handouts that I want to pass out to the kids. Now, the second day could look totally different. Probably I'll check for arrival and absences every day. But we won't maybe not have a homework every day. So I won't check a homework assignment that day. Materials, I don't want it to beat it to death. Maybe once or twice a week, maybe on different days when I can check it. And we may not actually have an assignment that day because we may be having a guest speaker. So the expected behavior that I want to emphasize is listening. So we're going to talk about what that looks like. we'll establish some criteria. So how would I know you're listening? Maybe you're nodding your head. Maybe you're taking notes. Maybe you're raising your hand to ask a question. And even if they're faking it, I don't care. I want it modeled so they get an idea of what it's like to wear these kinds of behaviors. At the end of the period, the points are totaled up. The pod sheet is put away again. And the following day, the process repeats. The power walk continues. And the power walk actually occurs several times during the period. So all my cooperative literacy teachers, they're like where you got your shoes. You're on your feet. Okay? Now, the question is, what do you do with the points? Right? Let's review real quickly. Power walk, teacher circulates, check with coordinators, high level interface with the students, a lot of eye contact, acknowledgement, anchoring. Again, the teacher assigns points to the coordinator at various stages of the lesson. And again, you just keep on walking. The pod point sheet, again, provides accountability for the students, provides a monitoring vehicle for the teachers, promotes interdependence and responsibility, provides immediate feedback to the students, and it tends to buffer student to teacher and student to student conflict because what you're talking about are the numbers. So the question is, what do you do with the points? Isn't that what you're thinking? So what do you do? What would be some of your ideas? Leah.
I have two thoughts of it. One of them is some kind of reward if they reach to a certain point. Like a reward day or something where we have like some kind of fun activity, and if everyone reaches their points, or maybe like.
So like a quota?
Yeah,
okay.
To a certain extent.
Okay. Another idea, anybody? A lot of people went blank all of a sudden with your faces. Can't see anybody. Elizabeth, what do you think?
Maybe a makeup day where they make up their points at a certain time. They can sit down and work on the missed assignments or work that they have missed.
Okay.
If they can make up those points that they have missed.
Okay. Taylor.
My school's pretty big with parent communication, so maybe you could share these with parents during parent-teacher conferences, or if they're like, how's my kid doing? You could show these to them, and they can kind of get what interaction, doing the work.
That'd be very interesting for parents to look at, sure. Okay. Laura?
They can earn time with cell phone. I usually take the cell phone out of the hand from them, so I can give free time with the phone.
Okay. All right. Any other ideas or thoughts? There's no wrong answer here, but let me give you my take on it. And this is going to sound kind of radical, I know, but the points are really not for the kids. The points are for you. Because as I'm assessing my students in their pods, I can make a calculation that if I've got a lot of 5s and 4s on the pod, that I know that they're meeting the criteria, they're getting there on time, they're bringing their materials, they're doing their homework, and they're on task during the time of the assignment. If I see that I got a lot of 1s and 2s, then I know I need to do some investigation and pull that pod out and have a little production meeting to figure out what's going on. It was interesting, a couple of cases. In one case, the pod was getting a lot of 3s because one gentleman was coming to class late every day. And when we had a meeting and the kids asked him what's going on, he said the reason he was late every day is because he had to walk his girlfriend across campus to class. And that was making him late. So the pod basically told him, that's not acceptable. She has to walk you to class from now on. And that tended to change things around because he was accountable to the pod. Another pod we had, an 8th grade social studies class, they actually fired a kid from the pod, told him he couldn't be in the pod anymore until he figured out a way to work his way back in. So we had to have a mediation on that and then get him to come and reattach with the pod. So there are interesting things that happen here. And it's sort of like creative tension in terms of the peer pressure. But when kids ask, what do you do with the points? My response is that the points will count toward your grade. They don't need to know how, but in effect they will. Because what carries the day is the work that the kids do. I'm not going to have a kid get a poor grade because somebody came to class late. What carries the day is the classwork, the homework, and the test grades. Okay, and that's what makes it. Now, it doesn't mean that I can't do things collaboratively, so I might do a collaborative test one time, or I might do a collaborative assignment. I'll show you how to do some of those later on in the semester. But the idea is to shift the dynamic and get kids to begin to look at and generate some means and ways by which they can self-assess how they're doing in these areas. Because if they're not bringing the materials and they're not coming on time or they're not there or they're not doing their assignments, they're going to have a negative result. So when you have the data in front of you to show them, it goes a long way. And all you're doing, it's not a conflict. All you're doing is showing them what the data is saying so that you can cause some opportunities to redirect. It's a different way of working with the class. Again, what some teachers will do is they'll make a competition out of it, and the winning pod, for example, will come in at lunch for a pizza party, which, if you reset your pods after that, the first thing the kids are going to do is going to look around the class and say, well, why should I bother? They're going to win. So that takes them right out of it. So we don't want to make these competitive structures. One thing that Leah said that some teachers did is they established a quota for the pods. So over a 2-week or 3-week period of time, if you could project the number of points that you wanted them to get, and everybody who reached the quota was eligible for some kind of activity or something like that, that might be one way to do it. But here's the deal. You don't even have to do that. All you have to do is work the system. The kids will understand and know why you're doing it. And if you tell them it counts toward your grade, that's all they need to know. No one's going to ask you for a Goldman Sachs analysis of what you're doing and how you account for the grades. You're not Deloitte and Touche, right? You don't need to bother with that. You just tell them it'll count toward your grade. And then you work it. When I made these pod sheets, I would do them double-sided so that I could use one sheet of paper over a 2-week period, and I put them in the pod folder. And you just let the numbers talk, and then you see where you are. It also helps you assess your own ability to work in the classroom with the kids. So there's a little bit of self-reflection on it as well. Okay, so that's the way the process works. And my goal is to reduce the need for the use of the need of even using the pod sheet. Once I have my class where I want it to be, through this, for lack of a better word, induction or training protocol, so they understand the rules and procedures in the classroom, then I can let the sheet go and see how it works. If they have a reversal of fortune, so to speak, then I'll bring the sheets out again and make that correction. But this is, again, a good mechanism for positive behavior support. You're letting the criteria speak loud and clear and giving them some feedback and assessment. It takes a little bit of organization, but the organization at the beginning will save you a lot of time later. The other point I want to make is that when you have these grouping structures built in, you no longer have to say, okay, go find someone to work with. Okay? Now, in getting kids to work out of their pod, you can do that in certain ways. I'm going to share that with you now. So let's do this. Oh, there we are. So if you just, on page 23, you could just kind of capsulize some of the ideas around the pod point sheet, and then we can go to the next part. The unfortunate part about being online is in my classes on campus, my classes are actually set up this way from day one. In a Zoom class, it's pretty hard to replicate that. So that's why I'm only able to explain it to you. Okay, I think everybody's got it. Well, as always, time for brain breaks. Are you ready? Here we go. Ned, I ordered a chicken and an egg from Amazon. Ned, let me know which comes first. So bad. Yeah, one more. Ned, hey, I went to the zoo today and saw twin pandas. Ned, that bears repeating. Okay. Trying to think of the best thing to do here. All right, so this is a writing prompt that I like to use just as an example of how to use the appointment book. So again, grabbing your piece of paper and a pencil, I'm going to give you 5 short sentences here, and I want to see if you can bind them into one using the fewest possible words, okay? So here are the sentences. There once was a trucker. The trucker's name was Tucker. The truck was stuck. The truck was in the muck. The truck was in Winnemucca. So let me give you about 2 or 3 minutes. See if you can take these 5 sentences, combine them into one, using the fewest possible words. So in sentence combining, you begin to cancel where things repeat. It's kind of like a math problem. You go through cancellation. So when you say that once
I'm done.
What's that? You're done?
I'm done.
Okay, hold
Yeah.
on. Don't say anything. Okay, you've had Henry do a little bit of work on it. It doesn't matter if you completed it or not for this simulation. Okay, so in your appointment book, what you would do here would be to write on your 1 o'clock appointment today's date, October 27th, and then you would move to your 1 o'clock appointment. So we're going to try this. We'll see if it'll work. So you'll be with more than one other person because of the availability of appointments here, but we'll still make it work. So we'll try this. Okay, I'm going to send you back to your other groups and just share some different options. But remember that in the real activity, you would just be with one other person. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to share, and you have a choice. You can either, if you hear an idea of somebody's that you like, you can take it. If you like yours, you can keep it. Or if you want to continue working on it, we're just going to be in here for about 2 minutes, okay? So let me go ahead and send you back here.
Okay. Are we sharing what we have?
Yeah.